Hi, my name is Ken Lasseson. I run the Microbiome prescription website and citizen scientists, etc. And what I want to do today is talking about picking probiotics. Often I've seen on social media, what probiotics should I use for this? What probiotics should I use for that? And often the answers that come up are a little bit concerning. Mainly because they aren't science-based and often they go on personal opinion. Something is there, and unfortunately, personal opinion often has a significant placebo effect, which means it may work because somebody believes it will work, not because it actually does. So when somebody else tries it, the result is nothing. So the goal is to use science to pick the probiotics you should try. Don't use marketing hype. I don't use internet legends or hearsay. So that is the purpose of this talk. And I will cover every way I know of selecting a science, i.e. knowledge-based method of which probiotics to be using. Now, let's do a quick summary of finding out which ones work for probiotics. We have two basic methods where we can break it down. One is you have no 16S microbiome results. 16S is a fancy name for a new DNA style or RNA style based analysis of your gut bacteria. And the second one is using that information. In other words, one case is you have no information, you have a symptom or you have a medical condition, and that's all you have, so you are flying semi-blind. On the other one, you have actual microbiome result, which means you actually have better understanding or better information about what the problem is and what is causing it and what to do with it. So the first one, with no information, we look at published studies on it and point you to a good source. Then we go on to inference from National Library of Medicine. I'll discuss what inference means so you understand what I mean when I use it. And then we use citizen science, which is people's contribution of their microbiome and their medical conditions to this site, the microbiome prescription site, and what we have managed by machine learning and artificial intelligence to discern the probable causes, or should say the bacteria which are associated with it. Then we'll go on and you see what we can do with a 16S microbiome site. The first one is actually doing gene analysis using the Keel's Encyclopedia of Genomes. It is sweet because it is condition agnostic. It doesn't know anything about what your medical condition is, but it will, by what it detects as deficiencies in the enzymes and chemicals being produced by your body, many hundreds and hundreds of them, make suggestions as to which probiotics will correct deficiencies. Think of it like a living, organic, bioactive supplement rather than a supplement as in mineral supplement or a vitamin C supplement, etc. So we're talking about bioactive supplement, which is sweet. Then we'll go on and return to what we did up above, except we are going to add into the information we're working from your microbiome sample, which makes it more accurate. And then citizen science, the same thing. And the last thing we will look at is the wide open, looking at outliers or other aspects of it. So you are picking bacteria by different criteria. And that one also is reasonably condition agnostic. Condition agnostic has the joys that if you have an unusual condition, we can make suggestions based on your 16S microbiome, not your diagnosed condition which nobody has ever heard of before. So it makes life a little bit sweeter. Okay, let's go on. And the first thing is to make use of published studies. And for that one, we have a sweet scenario. A gal up in Canada who is a pharmacist has done a bunch of lovely reviews and has a free website, so you can go there, and it is done nicely because what it does is it goes and lists available commercial brands, what is in it, and then goes and lists the studies where it is. But more important than that, it actually goes and lists information as to the quality of the study. In other words, you're doing some good, you know how much the results should be relied upon for accuracy. Some studies are badly done, some are very well done, etc. So that's where the site is, and we'll go over and take a look at that site in a moment. But before we go there, let us go and be aware of something. Many review websites on probiotics on the web are designed to be money makers for the person who put up the site. Simple, for open market, free market. We'll sell you whatever we can and make some money on it. These guys aren't selling probiotics, but they are selling the advice that you should use this or using that. They will get commissions from click-through to stores. Often it would be a click-through to an Amazon website, and thereby they get commissions from Amazon. Or they actually are paid for the listing products on their site. So now the question is, should you trust them? Generally, if you're being paid to sell something, you're not really concerned whether or not it works. You're concerned about whether or not you can get people to click through or to go and order and make money from it. So the result is those type of sites, do not trust their recommendation. If you click on one suggestion and you find yourself over on Amazon, take a hike. They are a recommend for pay thing and probably have no real concern about your health. More importantly, a trustable site should give references and evaluate the references. The site I just gave to goes and gives the level and defines what the levels are, whether or not it was evidence-based, appropriately designed, well-designed, and respective authorities are in agreement with it. In other words, this is really good, solid stuff. So at this point in time, let's go over and look at one of those sites. Okay, what we have here is one of the sites referred to, appropriately titled Clinical Guide to Probiotic Products Available in USA. There's also have one for Canada. And there are different ones because certain probiotics are available in Canada, which are not available in the US. For example, Nutriflora, which comes from Germany, which is a E. coli probiotic, a good, healthy one, which is well documented to help a variety of conditions like Crohn's, etc. So what we have here is the site, and we can pick adult health, women's health, functional foods, etc. So go in and you will see the brand name, the probiotic involved in it, and description of what it does. So if you go down here, for example, here we have one which has a stack of different probiotics on it. If we click here, you will go and find a number of studies, and there's not a single free study, so we find a couple of things. So some of those probiotics do help a few things. And then we can go over in number one, like Biogea, which we have more studies on. Again, you can go through, you can have the studies listed here, and you can go over to PubMed and read the actual studies. So that gives us some good, reliable information as to what to do. 53 products are there. If you really want to know what it is reliable to, for example, Good Belly, L-Plantarum 229V, which has the characteristics, and we have two strong things and one not so strong on citation. So we basically have information, we have evidence, and we have the evidence have been evaluated by a professional, so you can now be much more confident as to being a good science-based choice. The unfortunate thing is that the probiotic list does not cover every known condition. For example, it won't indicate whether or not a particular probiotic is helpful for something like Alzheimer's, or if it will be helpful for mast cell dysfunction or other conditions. Which means either you wait until somebody does a study, and 20 years from now, in which case, if it's Alzheimer's you are concerned about, it actually becomes immaterial. It's too late for the probiotic to do anything. Or you go over to other ways of getting evidence-based. And I use the word inference because that's what we are doing. A study, recognized study on, for example, PubMed, has shown that a particular probiotic called XYZ reduces some bacteria called ABC and increases other bacteria called DEF. Okay, so that's what it does. We know it does that much. We go over to PubMed and we find studies showing that a medical condition or a symptom, if we're working with citizen science database, reports high level of bacteria B, G, and H and low of E, K, and M. So we are now inferring that taking XYZ would improve B and E, which should mean that your medical condition or your symptoms should improve. Infers that it should. That's all we have, is that it improved 2 of the bacteria species involved. We must remember that XYZ impacts on G, H, K, and M may never have been measured or may never have been reported. What that means is we are using available limited knowledge. We are making reasonable deduction or inferences from the available information, realizing we have sparse information, which means we don't have perfect information. But it's what we have available, and we simply work with what we have available. That's the harsh reality. So let's go on. If you go to my website, you will find National Library of Medicine. It will list a whole variety of different bacteria. For example, let's take bipolar disorder. You won't find that in the probiotic review because it hasn't been well studied. So we don't have studies done showing which probiotic helps or don't help. What we do find from PubMed is we do have studies showing what bacteria shifts are seen with this medical condition. This list is updated at least quarterly. I go through a lot of articles on PubMed when it gets published and keeps this list up to date. So every bacteria, the list of each bacteria is going to keep increasing. If you want to know what the bacteria involved is, you just click studies here and it will go and list all the bacteria and link to where the information is coming from. So it basically gives you information. We now go over to an adjacent page, which is the PubMed adjustments, and we go in and we pick 1 or 2 items, and is automatically selected for anybody to get probiotic suggestion. And there's other items here, checkbox here are disabled if you are not logged in. But what you go is you just go down and you put check marks by the ones you're wanting, and then you click suggestions. Very simple, straightforward processes. So for example, if you have allergies, you have hay fever, you have acne, click all 3 of them, all 4 of them, all 5 of them. Click all the medical conditions which apply to you, and then it will go and attempt to calculate based on the profiles for all of those conditions. It also does it so that if a particular bacteria isn't common for all the conditions, that bacteria will get a higher priority in the computations. The result of it is your suggestions page. At the top of the page, you will find the description of how the items were produced. In this case, we're doing an a priori, that's no prior information adjustment. We don't do any filters, it's automatically turn off filters. And we see what we picked. For example, we have hay fever, allergies, and asthma. And down below, we see what particular probiotics species, not the brand name, just the species, are to be considered, and we see Paracassia and Cassia at the top. Paracassia is a subset of Cassia, and it's there. And then we have other things. The confidence numbers here reflects the number of studies showing the desired effect, because sometimes studies contradict each other, and the number of bacteria impacted. And we scale everything so that the top value is a 1, and then you can see the relative impact relative to that. So we see Lactobacillus casei, Bifidolongum would be the logical ones. Over on the right side, we also have probiotics, which will actually push things in the wrong direction. So you have a to take and you have a to avoid. And that's sort of a bit of an interesting one, because most of the time for lab studies, if something has an adverse effect, the study will never be published. They would toss it away. So we only get positive effects, because that's what helps for your career resume. You're a professional. So that's what we do here, nice and simple. We next go on to citizen science. This is based on people uploading their samples to the site and then adding the symptoms connecting to the sample. And what that does, it allows me to put the data through data science for artificial intelligence and determine patterns. So we do as before, we go in and we pick combination of conditions, and you find it's a different set, some of the same conditions, but you have other things, for example, chronic sinusitis, acne. You'll also have things like insomnia, flatulence, constipation, a whole bunch of different symptoms, not conditions, symptoms, which may be associated with conditions, but they are symptoms in and by themselves. And then you go and you select, and you will see that probiotics are pre-selected, and other things, because I'm not logged on, are disabled. Those require a active account to enable. And I just click that, and based on the odds, I use the word on odds because what we do is we weigh the significance, but the odds of it being significant. Basically, if something has odds of 1 in 10 and something else has odds of being 1 in 100, the ones that have 1 in 10 of being at random versus 1 in 100 of being at random, the one with 1 in 100 should be given more priority because it's a stronger association. Again, we click through, and you'll find up at the top, you'll find the a priori adjustment, and then in the filter, you'll find all the conditions which you pick, can be as many or as few. One thing to notice down the bottom is sometimes this can be very short, as in we may not have that much information about what the probiotics impact, which are documented, against the bacteria we wish to change. We're incomplete knowledge. So sometimes you have long lists, sometimes you have short lists. And in this particular case, we notice things like allergy, etc. And we see our old friend Lactobacillus casei is sitting up there, and Paracasei is sitting there. So we have had different weights than the last one. Both times, the last time they were 1 and 1. This case, they're not. But if you go and look at Planetarium, you find that also on Edwards. One comes from formal medical studies. This comes from citizen science. 2 independently determined lists. But we end up with very similar recommendations, which somewhat implies that we are probably going in the right direction. Now, when we hit having actual samples, life changes. How it changes is very simple. We know which bacteria you have, and if there are, and how much we have of them. And what we do is we take all those bacteria, we grind it through a encyclopedia of gene and genomics. The kegg.jp is the site. You can go there and explore it. It's an interesting site, lots of information, well maintained by academics. And we upload a sample. Which samples can you upload? if you go to the page listed, you will see which samples are uploadable. Some people do not, some microbiome providers do not make the data available. They have a trust me, we know what you're doing, and often they will sell you a probiotic which they claim is what you need. I'd rather have open evidence, and black box recommendations are things that do not sit well with me. I want to be able to get a second or third opinion, and that's the purpose of the site, is to be able to have open data and the ability for you to go and get multiple opinions from different people. So what we do is what is being produced by the microbiome is computed, and when we find something is concerningly low, we look for a probiotic bacteria that produces what is missing. So it may be a particular enzyme or a particular chemical, and we determine that this is abnormally low compared to other people in our sample database. So instead of doing inert supplements, we are doing active bioactive supplements. We are giving the bacteria that produces what we are missing, not just a static chemical, but actually doing that. Some cases, the bacteria will take up residency and may be ongoing. Other times, it will just be short-lived, but it will produce the chemicals and enzymes which will help correct the gut. And there we have the link to it. Sample ID equals, and then after that is the ID number of your samples. ID samples you can see on the side when you go and browse along, you see the sample ID that's at the top, so it's easy to know what a sample is. And we get a report, and the report showing by the weight. The weight is the number of missing items which this particular bacteria species produces. For example, the top one has a rate of 22. And we have two different probiotics. Both of them happens to be soil-based organism, SBO probiotics. And then we go down, and then we have one which is not soil-based, Colostrum butyricum. And we have the three known products which provides it into it. And the middle one is the one which is probably the most pure of it. That one wants other probiotics mixed in with it. And then we're going down, and then we're down. So what we do is you're given the names of where you can obtain the probiotics, depending on whether or not you can purchase those probiotics in your country, or if you can mail order them from where they are available. They can be, some countries has restrictions on importing probiotics, especially because they are living bioactive organisms. For example, the U.S. has restrictions against importing the probiotic Mutaflor, which has been used for over a century in Europe with no problems, but it's still prohibited unless you have a doctor's prescription for it. Because it's a bioactive, which has been demonstrated to be very effective for certain conditions. So by making health claims which are demonstrated, it has made itself a prescription drug, which gets interesting. Probiotics, which makes no health claims and no health evidence, no problem selling. If it makes health claims which can be validated, it becomes a prescription. Interesting conspiracy there. I'll leave you at that. Now, the next, so that's calculated. It does a ton of calculations in the background. It looks at several hundred, I think over almost 2,000 different items, and calculates things out that way. Some of the items, it won't find any probiotics at the moment, so we ignore that. So we just simply give, this is the best that we can do. Now, we go back to the Library of Science, and in this case, we add in the sample ID, which samples you're looking at, and we get a summary, which samples you're looking at, whether we're looking at allergies and asthma. And what happens is we go and look at the list, and anything which we don't have a matching pattern to what is published on National PubMed, we discard it. So the result is we're only looking at what you actually have in your microbiome and saying, okay, these are the things which are probably causing this medical condition, and hence these are the bacteria here. The sample I did not have allergies as a characteristic, so we do have the pair cases showing up, but other things coming up, Lactobacillus fermentum is there, which is now nice one to show up. And then we have the list of things to avoid. Same as before, all we have done is we have filtered the information by the sample. And when you are doing it as a login user, you will find that we now give you the names of the commercial products, and we give them a ranking, as in which ones has the most in terms of how many matches, because they may, as you saw on the last page, we have a long list of it, and a particular probiotic may have some of here, some of this, some of that, so it ends up, especially for probiotics which have dozens of species in it, it becomes a bit of fun. So what we do is we go and compute up and say, okay, which ones are the ones, how much is their impact or the confidence? And now you can just go down and pick whichever ones you prefer, which is available again in your marketplace, and go from there. Now, citizen science, we do the same thing, and it becomes odds-based. We don't look at the actual count, we just look at the odds, and we go through, and I think we have the same sample here, 0610. We do have the same sample, and we have similar combination here. In this case over here, we have actually more items in the avoid list. So we end up with two lists done two different ways. So we now have a different way of doing it. In this case, we are working from the symptoms we have and the associations of those symptoms to bacteria, which we have discovered by machine learning, and inferring which probiotics would help. The last item is actually going in and using the site and using custom suggestions. So you can go in and you can filter it by range, which are outliers. The Kalthoff-Moultrie outliers is suggested because it actually computes when the amount of a particular bacteria appears to be abnormal on a bacteria by bacteria basis by a mathematical process, and makes a subset of that, and then you can go over and select, and you have here probiotics, so you may only want that one be selected, or you want a combination of things depending on what your preferences are. Bottom line, for your issues or medical conditions, there may be no explicit studies. You may not be able to find documentation that this or that probiotic helps you. But we do have levels of fallback of logical evidence-based selection, either from PubMed studies or by symptoms, and you do the best matchup which you have. Symptom list will hopefully be growing a bit more, and data, the symptoms and the calculations and associations for the system science is dynamically done. So as more data comes in, the better things with. For example, talking to somebody today who was dealing with long haul COVID, as we get enough long haul COVID samples in, it will make suggestions for which probiotics are likely to help for long-haul COVID or other modifiers of the microbiome. Some of these things are condition agnostic. In other words, they don't care what medical conditions you have. They are being done on a basis which is independent of diagnosis. One is the Kyoto, which has been done on enzymes and end products being produced, and just looking at the microbiome without any additional information. And the other one is going and selecting bacteria selection criteria and seeing what comes from that. And you have a whole host of variety of criteria to select from, and hopefully this will help. So my hope is that this will help you make better probiotics choices, and that the probiotics have a much better chance of helping you significantly. Okay, with that, I'll let you go over and explore the sites.